The clash of privilege and prejudice shattered the office calm when an elite co-worker hurled a Coke at a black woman, unaware she was married to the CEO. Arrogance blinds even the most educated among us, especially when wrapped in assumptions about who belongs where. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The morning sun glinted off the glass and steel facade of Franklin Global as Nicole Johnson took a deep breath outside the towering skyscraper in downtown Chicago. Her crisp white blouse and tailored navy suit had been selected with meticulous care for this moment. After months of preparation, her mission was finally beginning. Nicole pushed through the revolving doors into the marble-floored lobby, her confident stride masking the strategic calculations running through her mind. The space buzzed with the energy of a Monday morning. Employees hurrying to elevators, the soft ping of notifications, hushed conversations about weekend activities. She was halfway across the lobby when a commotion erupted to her right. Jessica Parker, a young intern whose family name adorned one of the conference rooms upstairs, was laughing loudly with a group of similarly privileged 20-somethings. The young woman's designer outfit and effortless confidence spoke volumes about her place in the corporate hierarchy. Their eyes met briefly across the polished floor. Jessica whispered something to her companions, who snickered in response. Then, with deliberate slowness, the intern separated from her group and cut across Nicole's path. "Excuse me," Nicole said politely, attempting to step aside. Jessica's smile never reached her eyes. "Oh, I think you're lost," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. In one fluid motion, she tilted her cup forward, sending a cascade of dark, sticky Coke directly into Nicole's face and down the front of her pristine blouse. "Thought you were the cleaning lady," Jessica sneered, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Service elevators in the back." The cold liquid dripped from Nicole's chin onto her collar, seeping through the fabric and against her skin. The lobby fell silent. The moment suspended in collective shock. Nicole stood perfectly still, her expression unreadable as soda trickled down her neck and stained her carefully chosen outfit. Around her, employees froze in place. Some exchanged uncomfortable glances. Others stared at their phones with sudden intensity. A few smirked behind their hands, clearly enjoying the spectacle. No one stepped forward to help. Jessica tossed her empty cup into a nearby trash can with theatrical precision, then rejoined her friends, who were barely containing their laughter. The message was clear. This was the established order, and Nicole was at the bottom. What none of them knew, what Nicole had specifically arranged for them not to know, was exactly who she was. As the sticky soda soaked through to her skin, Nicole maintained her composure, mentally documenting every face, every reaction, every person who chose sides in that moment. This humiliation was just the first data point in her much larger plan. Jessica Parker's laughter ricocheted off the marble walls of Franklin Global's lobby, cutting through the shocked silence that had fallen over the crowd. Nicole Johnson stood perfectly still, cola dripping from her hair onto her ruined white blouse, her expression unreadable. The young intern's cruelty had created a spectacle that everyone witnessed, yet most pretended not to see. "Here," came a quiet voice from Nicole's left. Marcus Brown, an IT technician with kind eyes and hunched shoulders, extended a handful of tissues toward her. His gesture was quick, almost furtive, as if helping might somehow mark him as a target too. "Thank you," Nicole whispered, accepting his offering with dignity that seemed out of place amid such humiliation. A few feet away, Camilla Davis, an administrative assistant known for her efficiency and gentle demeanor, approached with paper towels from the reception desk. "The restroom is this way," she murmured, pointing toward a hallway. "I can show you." Nicole noticed how Camilla's eyes darted nervously toward Jessica, who was now high-fiving Brandon Smith by the elevator bank. The pair's influence was palpable, Even acts of basic human decency required courage in their presence. "I appreciate your kindness," Nicole replied, dabbing at her blouse. She observed how quickly the lobby returned to normal, how easily people resumed their conversations as if nothing had happened. Every reaction, every averted gaze, every whispered comment, she catalogued them all. What no one in that gleaming lobby realized was that Nicole Johnson wasn't just another new hire to be hazed and forgotten. She was the wife of Robert Johnson, the company's CEO, and more significantly, she was Franklin Global's newly appointed president. Her presence was part of a carefully orchestrated plan to assess the company's culture from within, a confidential restructuring mission that would transform the organization from its core. As she followed Camilla to the restroom, Nicole's mind was already processing the incident as valuable intelligence. The humiliation she just endured wasn't a setback, but the first of many tests she had prepared for. Her strategic vision had always been her greatest strength, the ability to observe rather than react, to understand the ecosystem before attempting to change it. In the restroom mirror, Nicole met her own gaze. Cola had stained her collar and left sticky trails down her neck, but her eyes remained clear and determined. This was just day one. She would learn who wielded power, who abused it, and who deserved it. She would discover which employees showed character when they thought no one important was watching. Nicole smiled slightly as she cleaned herself up. Jessica Parker had no idea what she had just set in motion. In the weeks following the lobby incident, Nicole Johnson found herself navigating a corporate minefield. Jessica Parker and her confidant Brandon Smith had transformed her workdays into an exercise in resilience. Their tactics were subtle but relentless. Documents mysteriously disappeared from her desk. Her computer would suddenly malfunction before important presentations, and meeting invitations never quite reached her inbox. "Did you hear she only got hired because of some diversity quota?" Jessica would whisper just loudly enough for Nicole to overhear as she passed the break room. Brandon would snicker, adding, "You probably won't last the month." The rumors they spread painted Nicole as incompetent and unqualified. They referred to her as the cleaning lady behind her back, a cruel callback to Jessica's first attack. The young intern seemed particularly determined to establish dominance, perhaps sensing something in Nicole that threatened her carefully constructed world of privilege. "Your report is missing the financial projections," Brandon announced smugly during a department meeting, sliding Nicole's supposedly complete document across the table again. Nicole simply smiled, pulled out her backup copy with the projections intact, and continued her presentation without acknowledging the sabotage. Her composure left Brandon visibly frustrated, his face flushing as colleagues nodded approvingly at her thoroughness. Throughout these trials, Nicole found unexpected allies. Every morning, Rosa Martin would be polishing the brass fixtures near Nicole's office. The janitor always offered a warm smile, and sometimes a quiet, "You got this," that meant more than elaborate encouragement could have. Rosa seemed to recognize something in Nicole, perhaps the shared experience of being underestimated. Camilla Davis, the administrative assistant whose desk sat outside the executive suite, became another silent supporter. She would leave post-it notes warning of upcoming ambushes. Jessica scheduled herself into your 3 o'clock, or place a fresh cup of coffee on Nicole's desk after particularly difficult meetings. These small gestures of kindness anchored Nicole amid the daily storm. What Jessica and Brandon couldn't understand was that each microaggression only strengthened Nicole's resolve. Every whispered insult, every sabotage project became evidence for the dossier she was mentally compiling. She observed how they treated others, dismissing Marcus from IT when he couldn't immediately fix their technical issues, speaking condescendingly to Camilla when requesting administrative support. Nicole's strategy wasn't to fight back, not yet. Instead, she watched, documented, and built relationships with those the company's elite had long overlooked. While Jessica and Brandon believed themselves untouchable, secure in their positions of privilege, they failed to notice the quiet revolution brewing right under their noses. The Franklin Global Annual Gala transformed the Chicago Riverfront Hotel into a glittering showcase of power and influence. Nicole Johnson arrived in an elegant midnight blue gown, her composure intact despite 3 weeks of subtle workplace hostility. She navigated the room with quiet confidence, exchanging pleasantries with executives who barely acknowledged her existence during regular office hours. From across the ballroom, Jessica Parker watched, champagne flute in hand, whispering to Brandon Smith. The intern's designer dress, likely purchased with her family's connections, sparkled almost as brightly as the contempt in her eyes. "She doesn't belong here," Jessica muttered, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Probably crashed the party." Nicole was engaged in conversation with Margaret Wilson when Jessica made her move. The board advisor had just finished sharing insights about the European headquarters when Jessica accidentally bumped into Nicole, sending a full glass of red wine cascading down the front of her dress. "Oh my goodness!" Jessica exclaimed with theatrical concern, her eyes betraying her satisfaction. "How clumsy of me!" The room fell silent. Executive vice presidents, directors, and their spouses all turned to witness the spectacle. Brandon smirked from a few feet away, clearly part of the orchestrated humiliation. Nicole looked down at her ruined dress, the wine spreading like a crimson stain across the expensive fabric. The moment stretched as everyone waited for her reaction. Tears, anger, or embarrassment would all satisfy Jessica's cruel intent. Instead, Nicole looked up with a serene smile. "Thank you for your refreshing contribution to my evening, Jessica. I was just telling Margaret how predictable these events can become." She dabbed at the stain, with a napkin handed to her by a mortified server. "You've certainly made this one memorable." Jessica's triumphant expression faltered. This wasn't the reaction she had anticipated. I can help you clean that," she stammered, suddenly uncertain. "That won't be necessary," Nicole replied, her voice carrying across the now silent room. "Some stains are meant to be visible. They remind us of important moments." As Nicole excused herself with impeccable grace, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Robert Johnson watched from across the room, his expression unreadable as his wife handled the situation with remarkable poise. Camilla Davis, who had witnessed everything, quickly followed Nicole to the restroom with club soda and a supportive smile. "Who is she really?" one executive whispered to another. The question hung in the air long after Nicole returned to the gala, her stained dress worn like a badge of honor, her dignity intact. For the first time, the power players of Franklin Global looked at her with something new in their eyes: curiosity, and perhaps the faintest glimmer of respect. 3 months into her undercover mission at Franklin Global, Nicole Johnson had established a careful routine. Each morning, she arrived early, exchanged a warm smile with Rosa Martin at the entrance, and methodically documented the company's toxic culture in a password-protected file on her device. "You're playing the long game," her father had reminded her during their weekly encrypted calls. Marcus Johnson, whose reputation in business circles was nothing short of legendary, had strategically placed his daughter within the company after hearing troubling reports about its culture. "Remember, patience reveals what haste conceals." Nicole took his words to heart. In her modest cubicle, deliberately positioned far from the executive suites, she observed everything. The way Jessica Parker received preferential treatment despite mediocre performance, how Brandon Smith took credit for others, work without consequence, the subtle ways certain employees were overlooked for promotions despite their qualifications. "And another incident today," Nicole whispered to Camilla Davis as they shared lunch in the break room. The administrative assistant nodded knowingly, having witnessed Brandon sabotaging Nicole's presentation files that morning. "He thinks nobody notices," Camilla replied, her voice barely audible. "But I made backups of your files. They're in your email now." These small acts of solidarity meant everything to Nicole. Her allies were few, but invaluable. Marcus Brown from IT had quietly granted her elevated system access, allowing her to track communication patterns between key players. Rosa kept her informed about conversations overheard during her cleaning rounds. Executives spoke freely around someone they considered invisible. In her apartment each evening, Nicole meticulously organized her findings: financial irregularities, hiring patterns that revealed clear bias, email threads showing coordinated efforts to undermine employees who challenged the status quo. The evidence was mounting, but she needed more before making her move. "You're not what they expect," Rosa told her one evening as they found themselves alone in the elevator. "That's your power." Nicole smiled at the janitor, recognizing the wisdom in her words. Sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage. What sustained Nicole through the daily indignities wasn't just her mission, but the genuine connections she'd formed. Marcus's quiet technical support, Camilla's unwavering administrative assistance, and Rosa's perceptive observations, each driven by their own experiences with the company's inequities. As she added another entry to her growing dossier that night, Nicole felt the weight of responsibility. She wasn't just fighting for herself or her father's legacy, she was fighting for every person who had ever been dismissed, overlooked, or humiliated simply because they didn't fit someone's idea of who belonged in the corridors of power. The elevator doors slid open on the 32nd floor, revealing Margaret Wilson standing alone in the dimly lit corridor. It was nearly 9 in the evening, and Franklin Global's headquarters had emptied hours ago. Margaret clutched a leather portfolio against her tailored blazer, her expression grave as Nicole Johnson approached. "I've been gathering this for months," Margaret whispered, handing over the thick dossier. "What you'll find inside is worse than we anticipated." Nicole nodded, feeling the weight of the folder in her hands. For 3 decades, Margaret had been her father's most trusted advisor. And now she was risking her reputation to help dismantle the toxic culture that had infected Franklin Global. Back in her office, Nicole spread the documents across her desk. Financial records revealed systematic discrimination in promotions and salaries. Email threads exposed Brandon Smith and Jessica Parker's coordinated efforts to undermine minority employees. Most damning were the board minutes showing deliberate suppression of harassment complaints. "They've built an empire on nepotism and fear," Nicole murmured to herself, tracing a finger along a spreadsheet that detailed suspicious financial transactions. The evidence was overwhelming. Jessica's family connections had shielded her from consequences for years, while Brandon had personally buried 3 discrimination lawsuits. Nicole's smartphone buzzed with a text from Robert. "How bad is it?" Her husband had warned her that the mission would test her resolve, but seeing the evidence laid bare made her stomach turn. She paced before the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago's glittering skyline. With these documents, she could destroy Jessica and Brandon's careers instantly. She could expose the board members who had enabled this behavior. The power she now held was intoxicating and terrifying, but something held her back. Her father had always taught her that true leadership wasn't about wielding power, but about transforming systems with integrity. "Anyone can burn a house down," Marcus Johnson had told her. "Few can rebuild it better." Nicole gathered the papers, sliding them back into the folder. Using these documents would give her the upper hand, but at what cost? Would she become just another executive who climbed to power through others? Destruction. The thought made her pause. She texted Margaret, "I need time to think. There must be a way to create change without compromising who I am." Nicole stared at the dossier, her reflection visible in the window glass behind it. The woman who had stood dignified while soda dripped from her face now held enough ammunition to bring down an empire. The question wasn't whether she could do it, but whether she could do it without becoming what she despised. The boardroom on the 43rd floor of Franklin Global had become Jessica Parker and Brandon Smith's favorite hunting ground. 3 months into Nicole Johnson's employment, they had convinced themselves her quiet demeanor signaled weakness rather than strength. "She's practically begging to be pushed out," Jessica whispered to Brandon as they huddled near the water cooler. The Morgan Project is perfect. The Morgan Project represented a 7-figure client acquisition that would determine quarterly bonuses. Nicole had been assigned to review the final presentation deck, a seemingly minor task that Jessica and Brandon saw as an opportunity. That evening, after most employees had left, Brandon accessed Nicole's computer while Jessica kept watch. They deliberately altered key financial projections in the presentation, replacing Nicole's accurate figures with grossly inflated numbers that would embarrass her in front of the executive team. "She'll be gone by Friday," Brandon smirked, adjusting his designer tie as they left the building. What they hadn't counted on was Marcus Brown noticing unusual activity on the network. The shy IT technician had been monitoring system access since Nicole's first day, not because she had asked, but because he'd witnessed the soda incident and developed a quiet protectiveness toward her. "Someone accessed your files last night," Marcus explained the next morning, nervously shifting his weight as he stood in Nicole's modest office. "I ran a comparison between your saved version and what's currently in the presentation. The numbers don't match." Nicole studied the evidence Marcus presented. "Thank you," she said simply, her composure unbroken. "Would you join me in the conference room in 20 minutes? When the presentation began, Jessica and Brandon exchanged confident glances as Nicole connected her device to the projector. Their smiles faded when she displayed both versions of the deck side by side. "I'd like to address a discrepancy," Nicole stated calmly. "These altered figures would have misled our client and damaged our reputation." She didn't name the culprits, but her gaze briefly met theirs. The following week, Marcus received an email requesting his presence in the executive suite. Expecting trouble, he was stunned when Nicole offered him the position of infrastructure manager. "Your integrity deserves recognition," she explained. "This company needs people who stand for what's right." The promotion doubled his salary, but remained largely unnoticed by the office gossip mill. Yet for Marcus, it was life-changing, allowing him to finally move his mother into better housing. Nicole continued this pattern, quietly elevating those who demonstrated character while gathering evidence against those who didn't. Her silent revolution was building momentum, one loyal ally at a time. The break room on the 7th floor of Franklin Global was typically deserted at 6:30 in the morning. Rosa Martin preferred it that way, enjoying a quiet moment with her coffee before beginning her daily cleaning routine. She'd been working at the company for nearly 8 years, invisible to most but observant of all. The door swung open, and Rosa looked up to see Nicole Johnson enter. Rosa offered her customary warm smile, the same one she'd given Nicole every morning since that horrible incident in the lobby. "Good morning, Ms. Johnson," Rosa said, already reaching for her cart to leave. "Please, stay," Nicole replied, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "And call me Nicole." Rosa hesitated, unused to executives wanting her company. The janitor watched as Nicole took the seat across from her, noticing how the woman's composed demeanor never wavered, even in these early hours. "Your kindness has meant more than you know," Nicole said softly. "When everyone else pretended not to see what happened that first day, you brought me a clean blouse from the lost and found." Rosa waved her hand dismissively. "Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't. You did." Nicole placed a folder on the table between them. "I've been reviewing the facilities management structure. The current supervisor is retiring next month." Rosa nodded. She'd heard the rumors but assumed, like always, that someone from outside would be brought in. "I'd like to offer you the position," Nicole said. The coffee cup in Rosa's hand trembled slightly. "Me? But I'm just a dedicated employee with 8 years of experience who knows this building better than anyone," Nicole finished for her. "You've managed the cleaning staff informally for years. The title and salary should reflect that." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. In 8 years, no one had noticed her organizational skills or how she quietly resolved conflicts among her team. By afternoon, word of Rosa's promotion had spread throughout the building. In the executive dining room, Jessica Parker nearly choked on her sparkling water when she heard the news. The cleaning lady, as supervisor. She whispered to Brandon Smith, "What is happening to this company?" Meanwhile, in IT, Marcus Brown smiled as he overheard the conversations. Something was shifting at Franklin Global, and for the first time, merit seemed to matter more than connections. In her office, Margaret Wilson reviewed Nicole's personnel changes with approval. The board advisor recognized the strategic brilliance behind these moves. Nicole wasn't just rewarding kindness, she was systematically rebuilding the company's foundation. That evening, as Rosa called her family with the news, a new sense of uncertainty rippled through Franklin Global's upper management. The unspoken rules were changing, and no one knew what tomorrow might bring. Camilla Davis had been watching everything unfold from her modest desk in the administrative pool. For weeks, she'd been slipping Nicole encouraging notes with her morning reports, offering quiet smiles in hallways, and occasionally running interference when Jessica and Brandon plotted their petty sabotage. She never expected recognition. That wasn't how Franklin Global operated. Merit rarely trumped connections. The email requesting her presence in meeting room 6 arrived on a Wednesday afternoon. Camilla's stomach tightened as she smoothed her simple navy dress and made her way through the executive floor, where she rarely ventured. Nicole Johnson was waiting, a gentle smile softening her professional demeanor. "Please, sit." Nicole gestured to the chair beside her rather than across the table. "I've noticed your work these past months." Camilla's eyes widened. "I was just doing my job." "Miss Johnson." "No." Nicole leaned forward, her voice warm but firm. "You've been doing much more than your job description requires. You've shown integrity when others showed indifference." The administrative assistant blushed. Unused to such direct praise from anyone in management, Nicole slid a folder across the polished table. "I need someone I can trust completely," she continued. "Someone who sees people for who they are, not what title they hold." "I'd like you to become my executive assistant." Camilla stared at the contract. The salary figure nearly double her current pay. "But I don't have the connections or..." "Connections." Nicole's laugh was genuine. "I've had enough of those to last a lifetime. What I need is competence and character. You have both." By the end of the day, Camilla had cleared her old desk and moved to the office adjoining Nicole's. The whispers started immediately. How had someone so junior, with no family name or prestigious degree, landed such a coveted position? Similar rumors had followed Rosa's promotion to facilities supervisor and Marcus Brown's advancement in IT. The pattern was becoming clear to the company's old guard, who had built careers on family names and golf club memberships. Their anxious glances multiplied in hallways and elevators. At the weekly executive meeting, Nicole introduced Camilla as her right hand. Several directors shifted uncomfortably, especially those who had previously dismissed the administrative assistant or treated her as invisible. "The winds are changing," muttered Brandon Smith to a colleague as they exited. "She's putting her people everywhere." What Brandon failed to understand was that they weren't her people because of loyalty pledged or favors owed. They were her allies because they shared her vision of a workplace where merit mattered more than pedigree. For Camilla, sitting at her new desk with a view of the Chicago skyline, the promotion felt like more than recognition. It felt like vindication. What began as a routine Tuesday at Franklin Global quickly spiraled into chaos when the IT department detected an unusual security breach. Several confidential emails had been compromised, their content suddenly accessible through a glitch in the company's server. Emily Clark, a quiet data analyst who typically kept to herself, was reviewing quarterly reports when strange notifications began appearing on her screen. Emily's eyes widened as she scrolled through messages that clearly weren't meant for her. The emails contained explicit exchanges between Jessica Parker and Brandon Smith discussing how they had deliberately manipulated financial reports to hide unauthorized expenses. Worse still, they had apparently been diverting company resources to personal projects while blaming discrepancies on lower-level employees. "We can pin this on the new diversity hires," Brandon had written. "No one questions when they mess up." Emily's hands trembled as she saved screenshots. Though relatively new to Franklin Global, she had witnessed Jessica's cruelty firsthand, particularly toward Nicole Johnson. The evidence before her explained why certain employees were consistently blamed, while others remained untouchable. After 3 hours of internal debate, Emily gathered her courage and requested a meeting with Nicole. She entered Nicole's office, clutching her smartphone nervously, uncertain whether bringing this information forward would end her career. "I found something you should see," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not sure who to trust, but I can't pretend I didn't see this." Nicole listened intently as Emily explained the breach and showed her the incriminating messages. Instead of dismissing her concerns, Nicole thanked her with genuine warmth. "What you've done takes extraordinary courage," Nicole said, her composure unwavering despite the bombshell revelation. "I promise your integrity won't go unrecognized." The data analyst left feeling both relieved and terrified. By the following morning, IT security teams were combing through systems, and Emily received a surprising email requesting her presence at an executive meeting. Within days, the evidence Emily had discovered became the foundation for a comprehensive investigation. Security personnel secured additional records, while Nicole quietly assembled a team, including Margaret Wilson, to assess the full extent of the corruption. Jessica and Brandon, oblivious to the gathering storm, continued their campaign against Nicole. Meanwhile, Emily found herself working closely with Marcus Brown and Camilla Davis on what Nicole called a special project of utmost importance. The walls were closing in on Franklin Global's toxic elite, and the catalyst was an unassuming employee who chose integrity over fear. The company stood on the precipice of transformation, with Emily's discovery serving as the first domino in what would become a complete corporate revolution. The Chicago Tribune's headline blazed across newsstands throughout downtown: "Toxic culture allegations rock Franklin Global." Within hours, 3 other local outlets had picked up the story, each adding new details about the discrimination claims emerging from one of the city's most prestigious corporations. Nicole Johnson watched from her office window as reporters gathered outside the building's main entrance. She had anticipated this moment, knowing that once Emily Clark's discovery became public, there would be no containing the fallout. The confidential emails implicated Jessica Parker and Brandon Smith in a pattern of discriminatory practices that extended far beyond their personal behavior. "They're saying the company has systematically overlooked harassment complaints for years," Camilla Davis said, placing a tablet on Nicole's desk with the latest online coverage. Her usually soft voice carried an edge of vindication. Nicole nodded. "And now everyone will know what we've been dealing with." In the executive lounge, Jessica paced frantically, her smartphone pressed to her ear. "Dad can't do anything. What about Uncle Richard on the board?" Her voice cracked as she listened to the response. Brandon sat nearby, repeatedly loosening and tightening his tie, his face ashen. "We need to call everyone who owes us," the young man insisted, pulling out his contact list. My cousin at the Tribune might be able to spin this, but their desperate attempts at damage control were failing spectacularly. Former allies weren't returning calls. Department heads who once laughed at their jokes now avoided eye contact in the hallways. The executive assistant who had always covered for their late arrivals suddenly couldn't remember their names when reporters called. Margaret Wilson, watching this unravel from her corner office, made a single phone call to Robert Johnson. "It's happening exactly as Nicole predicted," she said quietly. "The House of Cards is collapsing." Outside the building, Rosa Martin was approached by a reporter while returning from her lunch break. "I've worked here 15 years, the facilities supervisor said carefully. "Changes are coming that should have happened long ago." By afternoon, the company's public relations team had issued a carefully worded statement acknowledging the allegations and promising a thorough investigation. What they didn't mention was that Nicole had already compiled a comprehensive dossier documenting every incident. Jessica made one last desperate attempt, cornering a former ally in the parking garage. "You can't just abandon me now," she hissed. "Remember who got you that promotion last year?" The woman simply shook her head. "I remember who's been watching all along," she replied, glancing toward the upper floors where Nicole's office lights still burned bright, long after everyone else had gone home. The boardroom on the 40th floor of Franklin Global's Chicago headquarters fell silent as Robert Johnson stood at the head of the mahogany table. 12 pairs of eyes fixed on him, a mixture of confusion and apprehension evident on their faces. The emergency session had been called with little explanation, leaving the board members on edge. "I've gathered you here today to address the allegations that have surfaced," Robert began, his voice steady and authoritative. "But first, there's something you need to know about Nicole Johnson." At the mention of her name, several board members exchanged glances. The woman who had endured months of harassment was suddenly the center of their attention. "Nicole is not just another employee," Robert continued. "She is my wife and the newly appointed president of Franklin Global USA." The revelation landed like a thunderbolt. Margaret Wilson, seated near the window, allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. She had been one of the few privy to the plan from the beginning. "For the past 6 months, Nicole has been conducting a thorough assessment of our corporate culture," Robert explained. "What she discovered was deeply troubling. A system that rewards connections over competence, that tolerates discrimination, and that has been bleeding talent for years." One of the senior directors, his face flushed with anger, interrupted. "This is outrageous. You planted a spy among us." "Not a spy," Nicole said calmly as she entered the room, her presence commanding immediate attention. "A president doing her job. The culture at Franklin Global has been toxic for too long, and the evidence we've gathered is substantial." Margaret distributed folders containing documented instances of discrimination, nepotism, and financial irregularities. The room grew tense as board members flipped through pages of damning evidence. Within hours, the news of Nicole's true identity spread throughout the company like wildfire. Employees gathered in small groups, processing the revelation with a mixture of shock and awe. Jessica and Brandon, who had tormented her relentlessly, suddenly found themselves isolated as former allies distanced themselves. For Marcus Brown, now infrastructure manager, the news brought a sense of vindication. He had recognized Nicole's quiet dignity from that first day in the lobby. Camilla Davis felt a surge of pride, knowing her instinct to support Nicole had been right all along. Rosa Martin heard the news while supervising her cleaning team. She smiled to herself, remembering how she had offered Nicole a clean blouse after the Coke incident, never suspecting she was helping the future CEO. As the day ended, Nicole stood in her newly revealed office, gazing out at the Chicago skyline. The path forward would not be easy, but the masks had finally fallen. The real work of transformation could now begin. The security footage appeared on social media at 8:30 on a Tuesday morning. Within hours, the video of Jessica Parker throwing coke at Nicole Johnson had been viewed over 2 million times. The timestamp in the corner showed it was from Nicole's first day, capturing in stark clarity what many at Franklin Global had tried to forget. In the footage, Nicole's composed reaction was even more striking than Jessica's cruelty. While soda dripped from her hair onto her white blouse, Nicole had simply stood there, dignity intact, refusing to give Jessica the satisfaction of a reaction. "This is what black women face every day in corporate America," wrote one viral comment. National news outlets picked up the story by noon, with headlines questioning the culture at one of Chicago's most prestigious firms. Hashtags demanding accountability trended nationwide. Inside Franklin Global, employees gathered around screens, many seeing the incident for the first time. Some who had witnessed it live now squirmed uncomfortably, remembering their own silence. Marcus Brown watched from his new office, vindicated but somber. He'd been one of the few to offer help that day. "I knew something would eventually come out," Camilla Davis whispered to Marcus during lunch, "but I never expected it to blow up like this." By afternoon, Franklin Global's PR team was in crisis mode. Robert Johnson issued an immediate statement announcing that Jessica and her accomplice Brandon Smith had been suspended pending a full investigation. The CEO's carefully worded message acknowledged the company's responsibility to address systemic issues of racism and privilege. Jessica attempted damage control with a hastily recorded video apology from her apartment. "I deeply regret my actions," she said, her voice breaking in what many viewers later described as performative tears. "This isn't who I am." Brandon released a written statement distancing himself from the incident, though security logs showed he had been present and laughing. Both apologies were dissected and dismissed across social media platforms as hollow attempts at self-preservation. Margaret Wilson convened an emergency meeting with the board. "This isn't just about two bad employees," she stated firmly. "This is about the culture we've allowed to fester." Rosa Martin, now in her role as facilities supervisor, found Nicole alone in her office that evening, watching the coverage with a distant expression. "Are you okay?" Rosa asked. Nicole turned to her. "I didn't want it to happen this way, but maybe it needed to." The security footage had done what months of quiet work couldn't. It had made the invisible visible. As night fell over Chicago, Franklin Global had become the reluctant face of a conversation America had been avoiding for decades. Margaret Wilson strode through the executive floor with purpose, her leather portfolio clutched tightly against her chest. The viral video of Jessica's attack on Nicole had created the perfect storm, and Margaret wasn't about to let this opportunity slip away. After 30 years in corporate America, she recognized a watershed moment when she saw one. "This isn't just about one incident," Margaret declared to the hastily assembled board members. Her voice, though measured, carried the weight of conviction. What happened to Nicole represents a systemic failure of leadership. The boardroom fell silent as she methodically laid out her case. Margaret had spent weeks compiling evidence against 4 senior board members, Richard Thompson, Victoria Hayes, James Donovan, and Peter Blackwell. Their fingerprints were all over the company's toxic culture, from blocking diversity initiatives to protecting employees like Jessica and Brandon, despite numerous complaints. "These individuals have actively undermined every attempt at meaningful change," she continued, sliding copies of her findings across the polished table. "They've created a culture where people like Jessica Parker feel entitled to humiliate others without consequences." Robert Johnson sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable as he reviewed the documents. The CEO had known this moment was coming. It was part of the strategy he and Nicole had carefully crafted months ago. "I move for their immediate dismissal," Margaret concluded, making eye contact with each person present. Franklin Global cannot claim to value integrity while these four remain in positions of power. The debate that followed was heated, but brief. Several board members who had previously aligned with the old guard now sensed which way the wind was blowing. The public relations disaster looming over the company made their decisions surprisingly straightforward. 3 days later, employees gathered around their devices as the announcement from European headquarters appeared in their inboxes. The message was clear and unprecedented. All 4 board members had been terminated, effective immediately. In the break room, Marcus Brown and Camilla Davis exchanged meaningful glances as they read the news. "I never thought I'd see the day," Camilla whispered, her voice tinged with cautious optimism. Rosa Martin, now facilities supervisor, nodded as she joined them. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. Throughout the building, the atmosphere shifted palpably. Employees who had kept their heads down for years now walked a little taller. Those who had benefited from the old system looked nervously over their shoulders. Margaret stood by the window in her office, gazing out at the Chicago skyline, when her phone buzzed with a message from Nicole. "Thank you for your courage." She allowed herself a small smile. Change wasn't just a promise anymore. It was finally happening. The announcement came via email at 9 in the morning. Every employee at Franklin Global USA received the same message from European headquarters. Nicole Johnson had been officially appointed Chief Executive Officer. The company-wide notification requested all staff to gather in the main lobby at 11 for a special address. As employees filed into the marble-floored space, hushed conversations filled the air. This was the same lobby where, 6 months earlier, Nicole had stood dripping with soda, humiliated before strangers who would become colleagues. Now the space buzzed with anticipation and uncertainty. Margaret Wilson stood near the front, her face betraying a hint of satisfaction. Nearby, Marcus Brown adjusted his tie nervously, while Camilla Davis organized the small stage area with practiced efficiency. Rosa Martin had ensured the lobby gleamed for the occasion, her new team of facilities staff having worked since dawn. At precisely 11, Robert Johnson emerged from the elevator, Nicole at his side. She wore a tailored navy suit that exuded confidence, her posture relaxed yet commanding. The crowd fell silent as the couple approached the podium. "Good morning," Nicole began, her voice carrying effortlessly across the lobby. "Many of you know me as the woman who quietly joined your ranks half a year ago. Today, I stand before you as your CEO." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle. Several employees exchanged glances, particularly those who had witnessed her first day. "Franklin Global was founded on principles of excellence and innovation," she continued. "But somewhere along the way, we lost sight of our most valuable asset, our people." Nicole outlined her vision with calm authority, emphasizing transparency, merit-based advancement, and zero tolerance for discrimination. Her words were measured, her gaze steady as it swept across familiar faces. "The culture of an organization isn't defined by its mission statement, but by how we treat each other every single day," she said. "From this moment forward, your worth at Franklin Global will be measured by your character, your work ethic, and your treatment of others. Nothing more, nothing less." Robert stepped forward briefly, expressing his full support for Nicole's leadership and the new direction of the company. The unified front they presented left no room for doubt about the seriousness of the changes to come. As Nicole concluded her address, she looked directly at the spot where Jessica had once humiliated her. "Transformation begins with a single act of courage," she said. "I invite each of you to be part of ours." The applause began slowly, then swelled throughout the lobby. It wasn't merely polite. It carried the unmistakable energy of hope. For the first time in years, the employees of Franklin Global believed that change might actually be possible. Nicole Johnson made a point of visiting the IT department first thing Monday morning. She found Marcus Brown hunched over his keyboard, troubleshooting a server issue. When he looked up and saw the CEO standing there, his eyes widened with surprise. "Without your kindness that first day, I might have walked out and never come back," Nicole said, handing him an envelope. Inside was his official promotion to infrastructure manager, along with a handwritten note thanking him for his integrity when so many others had turned away. That same afternoon, Nicole invited Camilla Davis to her office. The administrative assistant entered nervously, still not entirely comfortable in the executive suite despite her recent promotion. "You offered me kindness when it wasn't popular," Nicole told her. "That takes more courage than most people understand." She presented Camilla with a leadership development package that included mentorship with Margaret Wilson and advanced training in corporate communications. Finding Rosa Martin proved more challenging. The facilities supervisor was constantly moving throughout the building, overseeing her new team with quiet efficiency. Nicole finally caught up with her in the East Wing. "You saw me when others looked through me," Nicole said, embracing Rosa warmly. "I'd like you to help design our new employee recognition program." Yes, the two women shared a moment of understanding that transcended their professional relationship. Both knew what it meant to be underestimated. Emily Clark was the last on Nicole's list. The young employee who had brought forward the damning emails had been promoted to compliance specialist, but still seemed unsure of her place. Nicole invited her to lunch at a small restaurant across from headquarters. "Courage isn't about being fearless," Nicole told her over their meal. "It's about doing what's right, despite your fear." You embodied that. Throughout the building, the atmosphere was changing. The executive floor, once an exclusive domain of closed doors and hushed conversations, now hosted weekly open forums where employees from all levels could speak directly with leadership. Robert Johnson watched with pride as his wife transformed the company culture. "You've done more in 6 months than I managed in 6 years, he admitted one evening as they left the building together. The old guard who remained quickly adapted or found themselves isolated. Workshops on unconscious bias replaced the former networking events that had always excluded certain employees. Performance reviews now emphasized collaboration and mentorship alongside traditional metrics. In the lobby where it had all begun, Nicole installed a simple plaque that read, "Dignity is not earned, it is inherent." Every morning as employees passed by, it served as a quiet reminder of how quickly things could change when people chose courage over comfort. Jessica Parker and Brandon Smith frantically worked their phones, calling in every favor they had accumulated over years of networking. Their desperation was palpable as they reached out to former mentors, family connections, and industry acquaintances. One by one, their calls went unanswered or were met with awkward excuses. "I'm sorry, but we can't risk the association right now," said one executive who had previously invited Jessica to family gatherings. Brandon faced similar rejections, watching helplessly as his carefully curated LinkedIn connections quietly removed him from their networks. The pair, once untouchable at Franklin Global, now found themselves persona non grata across Chicago's corporate landscape. Their fall from grace was swift and absolute. The viral security footage showing Jessica throwing the coke at Nicole Johnson had become a cautionary tale in diversity training sessions at companies throughout the city. "Did you see what happened to those two at Franklin?" became a whispered warning in boardrooms and break rooms alike. Their names had become synonymous with the outdated privilege that corporations were now desperate to distance themselves from. Meanwhile, inside Franklin Global's transformed headquarters, not everyone celebrated the new order. A vocal minority of mid-level managers watched with thinly veiled resentment as Marcus Brown implemented his innovative IT infrastructure plan. Some employees muttered that Camilla Davis had only received her executive assistant position because she had been nice to the right person at the right time. Rosa Martin's promotion to facility supervisor sparked particularly bitter comments from those who had previously ignored her existence entirely. "Suddenly the janitor's running the building," one disgruntled department head remarked during lunch. Nicole was neither blind nor deaf to these undercurrents. During a company-wide town hall meeting, she stood confidently at the podium, addressing the elephant in the room. "I understand some of you believe certain promotions have been based on favoritism," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Let me be transparent. Every single advancement in this company is now based on demonstrated character, consistent performance, and genuine merit, not on who your parents are, which country club you belong to, or who you had drinks with last weekend." She paused, allowing her gaze to sweep across the room. "Those days are over at Franklin Global, and anyone who can't adapt to a workplace where respect and performance matter more than connections is welcome to follow Jessica and Brandon out the door." The silence that followed was profound. Even those who had harbored doubts recognized the truth in her words. The old ways of doing business weren't just being discouraged. They were being systematically dismantled, replaced by something more equitable, if unfamiliar. Rosa Martin and Nicole Johnson often met in the small garden terrace on the 5th floor of Franklin Global's headquarters. Away from the corporate bustle, they would share stories over coffee, their conversations flowing with a natural ease that belied their different positions within the company. "And my grandmother used to say resilience runs in our blood," Rosa said one afternoon, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug. She cleaned houses for 40 years, never missed a day. Nicole nodded, understanding the weight behind those words. "My father taught me that being twice as good wasn't enough. We had to be unimpeachable." She smiled slightly. "I never imagined I'd have to prove it by having soda thrown in my face." Their shared laughter carried across the terrace, a sound that would have seemed impossible months earlier. As black women who had navigated predominantly white spaces their entire lives, they recognized in each other the familiar dance of code switching, of calculating which battles to fight, of maintaining dignity when others sought to strip it away. Word of their friendship spread throughout the company. Employees who had previously felt marginalized began approaching Rosa with their stories, their ideas, their hopes. The facilities supervisor, once invisible to most, had become a bridge between leadership and staff. Meanwhile, in the technology department, Marcus Brown and Camilla Davis had formed their own powerful alliance. The former IT technician, now infrastructure manager, had partnered with Nicole's executive assistant to implement new mentorship programs. "We need to formalize what Nicole did for us," Camilla explained during a planning meeting, her voice no longer soft, but confident. "Create pathways for talent that might otherwise be overlooked," Marcus agreed, his natural shyness giving way to purpose. The old system rewarded the loudest voices, not necessarily the best ideas. Their initiative quickly gained traction. Weekly innovation workshops brought together employees from all departments and levels. The hierarchical walls that had once divided Franklin Global began to crumble, replaced by collaborative spaces where merit truly mattered. One morning, a young intern approached Rosa in the break room. "I never thought someone who looks like me could advance here," she admitted. "But seeing you and Nicole working together gives me hope." Rosa smiled, remembering her own journey from janitor to supervisor. "That's exactly the point," she said. "Hope isn't just a feeling, it's seeing the possibility made real." Across the building, employees who had once accepted the status quo began to imagine different futures for themselves. The transformation wasn't just in policy or personnel, it was in the collective belief that change wasn't just possible, it was already happening. Nicole Johnson's professional triumph came with a steep personal price tag. The Chicago Tribune ran a front-page story exposing her undercover mission at Franklin Global, thrusting her marriage to Robert into unwelcome public scrutiny. Their relationship, once a private sanctuary, became fodder for business podcasts and social media speculation. "Did you know all along?" Reporters shouted at Robert outside their Lakeshore Drive apartment. The CEO maintained his composure, but behind closed doors, the strain was evident. Months of secrecy had created distance between them. Robert had supported her mission, but watching his wife endure daily humiliation tested his resolve. "I almost broke our cover 3 times," he confessed one evening as they sat on their balcony overlooking Lake Michigan, especially after what Jessica did at the gala. Nicole reached for his hand. "We both knew the cost going in." Their marriage counselor, recommended by Margaret Wilson, helped them navigate the aftermath. The deception required for Nicole's mission had left invisible scars on their relationship. Trust needed rebuilding, not just with each other, but with their closest friends, who felt betrayed by the elaborate ruse. Nicole's father, Marcus Johnson, visited them in Chicago, concerned about the toll the mission had taken on his daughter. "You've always carried the weight of others," he told her over dinner, "but who carries you?" The question lingered as Nicole faced criticism from unexpected quarters. Some business columnists questioned her methods, calling the undercover approach manipulative. Others suggested her success came from privilege, the irony not lost on Nicole, who had endured months of discrimination to expose that very system. Rosa Martin became an unexpected source of strength during this period. The former janitor, now facilities supervisor, invited Nicole for coffee at a small cafe away from corporate eyes. "My grandmother always said that changing things means making people uncomfortable," Rosa told her, "including yourself." Those words sustained Nicole through the difficult days. When a prominent business magazine requested an interview about her experience, she agreed on one condition, that Camilla Davis, Marcus Brown, and Rosa would be featured alongside her as architects of change. Despite the personal turmoil, Nicole never wavered in her conviction. At night, she would read emails from employees whose lives had transformed under the new culture she had fostered. A young black woman wrote that she finally felt seen. An older employee thanked her for creating an environment where merit mattered more than connections. These messages became Nicole's anchor. Her story, painful as it was, had become something larger, a testament to resilience that resonated far beyond Franklin Global's walls. For every person who had ever been dismissed, overlooked, or underestimated, Nicole's journey offered something precious, proof that dignity could prevail. The Chicago skyline blazed with amber and gold as the sun descended behind the glass towers. Nicole Johnson stood at the edge of Franklin Global's rooftop terrace, her silhouette framed against the fading light. The gentle evening breeze carried away the weight of the past year's battles, leaving behind a sense of hard-won peace. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Robert approached, handing her a glass of sparkling water. His presence beside her felt right, their partnership stronger now than before they had embarked on this mission. Nicole nodded, taking in the panorama of the city where her professional life had been both destroyed and reborn. "It feels different up here now." "Everything feels different," Robert agreed, loosening his tie. "The board meeting today was actually productive. No power plays, no hidden agendas." Nicole smiled, remembering how Marcus Brown had confidently presented his IT infrastructure overhaul plan, the same man who had once nervously offered her a tissue in the lobby. And Camilla Davis, now her trusted executive assistant, had commanded the room's attention with her quarterly report, her voice no longer soft-spoken, but assured. "Did you see Rosa's face when her facilities team won the Sustainability Award?" Nicole asked, warmth filling her voice. "I did. That woman has transformed this building from the ground up," Robert replied. "Emily stopped me in the hallway too. She's heading to New York next month to help implement the transparency protocols at the East Coast branch." The transformation went beyond personnel. Where whispers and sidelong glances had once dominated, open discussions now flourished. The marble lobby, Once the stage for Nicole's humiliation had been redesigned with community spaces where employees from all levels mingled freely. "I received another email from Jessica today," Nicole said quietly. "Another apology." Robert raised an eyebrow. "And I told her what I tell everyone. Actions speak louder than words." Nicole set her glass down on the ledge. "The door is open if she wants to earn her way back. But there are no shortcuts anymore." The lights of downtown Chicago began twinkling to life below them, a constellation of possibilities. Franklin Global's transformation had rippled through corporate America, with 3 other major companies adopting similar reforms after the media coverage of their success. "Your father would be proud," Robert said, taking her hand. Nicole squeezed his fingers, thinking of Marcus Johnson's lessons about integrity and patience. This was never about revenge. It was about building something that lasts. As twilight deepened around them, Nicole reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Franklin Global had been transformed, not just in policy but in spirit. Her legacy was clear. No matter how deep the prejudice, dignity and empathy remained the most revolutionary forces of all.